Today I want to explain something very important, especially to Ugandans. You may not even be a Ugandan, but if you plan on buying an iPhone which you've seen being sold at a very small price, if you ever gone to town and someone tells you this iPhone 14 Pro is only 700k, everything was fine, only the signal is not working right now, this video is probably for you. Now, these phones usually look very okay. I mean, they connect to Wi-Fi, they turn on, but behind the scenes, you're actually buying a ticking time bomb. So let's talk about bypassed phones, or as people like to call them, Wi-Fi only iPhones. Why they are cheap, why people still buy them, and why you should probably not buy. So what is a bypassed iPhone? Okay, an iPhone becomes bypassed when it has been iCloud locked, and then someone bypasses that setup screen without actually using the legal ways, but rather by using a software to bypass that setup screen. Yeah, the phone usually looks very usable and it looks as if everything is fine, but in reality, this phone is still locked on the Apple servers. The lock was never removed, it was just hidden. Why are these phones becoming so common in the Ugandan or African market at large, or generally everywhere worldwide? Well, let's be honest, buying a new iPhone is very expensive. For example, if you're buying the latest, maybe iPhone 14 Pro, 15 Pro, 16 Pro, or even 17 Pro, you're really going to pay a fortune on such a phone. So most times when people hear of an iPhone, say 14 Pro being sold at just a fraction of the original price, most people are tempted to go and buy those iPhones. Now, most people who are tempted are usually students, first-time iPhone buyers, content creators, and people who just want the iPhone status. To be fair, the temptation seems understandable, but one thing you need to notice when it comes to phones is that cheap is not always good. Let me give you an example. You're walking around looking for a cheap iPhone to buy, or maybe in downtown Kampala, and someone shows you an iPhone, maybe 14 Pro, they are telling you we need 600k for it. You check the phone, the Wi-Fi is working, the phone allows you to turn it on, everything seems working. Though there is one catch, there is no cellular signal. The seller is telling you that the phone is Wi-Fi only, and maybe he tells you that the signal will come later. You buy it and then 2 weeks later, still no signal. You can't sign into your iCloud and the phone logs you out randomly. Even apps themselves stop updating. You go back to the seller, he tells you, well, bring money and we bypass it again. The cycle simply never ends. But now the question is, why are these phones always cellular locked? Or why do they allow you to only access Wi-Fi? Okay, the thing is, when an iPhone has an activation lock in it, the activation lock is embedded deep in the baseband chip. So most iPhones which are not activated won't be able to access cellular network. So even when the iPhone has been bypassed, well, it's usually the user interface which has been bypassed, but the activation lock is still in the phone deep down on the hardware level. And why Wi-Fi is able to work? Well, if you've ever touched an iPhone with an activation lock, you must have noticed that those phones allow you to sign into Wi-Fi. So even when it has been bypassed, the Wi-Fi will still work. But as for cellular network, it won't be able to work. And it's not like the bypassing softwares actually can't enable cellular. But you see, enabling cellular is going to make the iPhone much more unstable than it already is. So most bypassing softwares just decide to ignore cellular altogether. But now let's get to the part of the risks which are involved in you actually buying such a device. First of all, most of these devices will never allow you to log in with your iCloud or your Apple ID. Reason: on the Apple servers, the device is actually still iCloud locked. So there is no way they would enable you to log in with a different iCloud, yet the device is still locked to another iCloud. Even if you're able to, it's usually within the App Store, of which even that you're not sure if it's actually going to work. And even if it does allow you to log in with your Apple ID, you logging in with your personal Apple ID is actually going to get your Apple ID flagged. You may get security warnings and your Apple ID may even be restricted on your other legitimate devices. Another thing people never seem to think of when buying these devices is the resale value. A bypass device is going to have zero resale value. Taking into an Apple center for repair or any warranty covers, trust me, Apple is not going to touch such a device. Even trade-ins, they are not possible at all with such a device. Also, not forgetting that these devices can't update their softwares. Yeah, they don't receive software updates. And even if they do, the moment you install this update, this is actually going to make the device get locked again. And of course, not forgetting the risk that most of the time, sooner or later, that device is going to get locked again due to one reason or another. And then the seller can also decide to disappear, because dealing in such devices is usually shady business, and chances are you're not going to see that seller also do that device ever again. So even when it gets locked again, you're most probably going to get stuck with a bricked device which can't do anything. Yeah, so if you can't afford a legit device at the moment, or even maybe refurbished or used device, I don't really advise anyone to go for these bypassed or Wi-Fi only devices. You're not making an upgrade, you're simply gambling with your money, and that's something you don't want to be doing. Yeah, that iPhone is cheap for a reason, and you really shouldn't be buying it. Now, if this video saved you from making a bad purchase or a bad decision, like it, share it with your friend, and follow me for more tech videos like this.